You're not really wearing that, are you?
Wearing what?
The man
This
purse.
is where I keep all my things. I get a lot of compliments on this. Plus, it's not a man purse. It's called a satchel. Indiana Jones wears one.
Reverse! Reverse!
Hey God, what's up? Hey Angel, did you give the dinosaurs more muscle like I asked? What? I told you to make them meteor. Make them a meteor. 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 Meteor.
You know, we have a lot of expressions in the English language.
I don't even know what I'm saying.
What are we talking about?
Where'd that come from?
Most all of us use them every day.
I don't even know what that means.
No one knows what it means.
You know, we just say them as if they really made sense.
I mean, how silly is that?
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
What the f is he talking about?
Yo, what's good? You know who it is, you know what it is. It's the Appraised Appraised Show, Origins of Everyday Expressions with me. It's me, Mario, in the building where we're here to do three things: unveil the origin, confirm the meaning, and assess the value of common everyday phrases. You already know who I have to my left when you're watching on YouTube. I know, I'm like, which direction? 20, what's good, brother?
Yo, listen, man, you definitely know how to open up shows to get me, get me up and get me going. No, I'm gonna pause that too as well, just for the newcomers
For sure.
that's watching the shows. You know how we talk. No, man, I'm good, man. It's actually a really beautiful day out today, and man, we've been getting some rain lately, so yeah, man, I'm gonna try and take advantage of it.
Much needed rain? Is that how y'all see it out there?
No. Like because it'll rain all week type of deal, and it's like, all right, bro, we probably needed like a couple of hours. Now we got like 3 days of rain. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those situations.
The pool. What about the pool? Exactly. I have a pool.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, a Miami problem or a warm climate city, not even state, but city problem is like, damn, bro, now my pool, I got to clean my pool because it's raining and all that other, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's one of those issues that I'm not.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool with me because you never have to shovel, so you won't. I love you, brother, but you won't ever.
Oh, yeah.
You won't ever get that from me.
That is one thing that is one thing that I do not regret. That is one thing that I do not miss. That is one thing that Absent did not make the heart fonder for, is that snow.
You're the man.
Look,
Go for it.
I'm from Boston and I'm in New Orleans, and that snow is part of why. You know what I'm
trust
saying?
Me, listen, trust me.
Look.
That's exactly what it is.
It was. Well, I like the snow. I actually do like the snow, but not
full swear.
Not in fucking May. You know what I'm saying? I don't want snow in May. That's some bullshit. And I was in Brooklyn for 14 years, and it snowed in May, and that's when I was like, you know what?
Yeah. Not going on snow in May. Anything after March is pushing it. You're pushing it.
March is it. That's it. No, we had a blizzard in May once, and I was done. I was like, no way. But I do love snow. Snow is beautiful.
And I will give it that, and I would miss it as a Michigander most of my life. I would miss it. I've told people I would have to go find it if I lived in a warm climate state, but I don't want it as my way of life. I just don't. Hey man, this is great. Let's get into it. First, we just had a first. I got it. The crowd's going. That is Daniel Older, everybody. Like, look, a first. Usually people are shy about like talking to us while we're riffing. My man Daniel jumped in there. We just talked about how you can do that. And as a man of his word, he did that. He's an author of many books, many comics, from Boston, living in New Orleans, spent a horrible May in Brooklyn. Daniel, talk to the people, man.
That's my bio. That's my new bio. That's what everyone have to say about me whenever I do an event now.
Horrible man. He's horrible man.
One May in Brooklyn did him in. Put that on my gravestone.
Enjoyed life.
It's your May in Brooklyn.
Until that May, right? It was a wrap.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Daniel, tell the people that
are
the viewers and the listeners a little bit more about you. I love your resume. I don't know if you're one of those people that don't toot their own horn, but please do.
No, I do. No, I do. I plan to. But let me first say I'm really happy to be here. I have no idea what the show is about, and I say that with total respect. Yeah, like it's not that I didn't want to know. It's just that I trust Mickey. Because we trust. That's why I'm here. Because y'all trust Mickey. So we all trust Mickey. And I kind of, when you're like, you hear a lot of hype about a movie, and you're like, I don't want to know nothing. I'm just gonna go see the movie. Right. That was my approach to this show. I said, I'm just gonna come and find out what it is. So I didn't do no research or nothing else. So I'm just excited to talk to y'all. We'll see what happens. But that said, let's see. I'm a writer. That's who I am. I'm a storyteller, and one of my jobs is I'm one of the lead story architects for Star Wars: The High Republic, which is a cross-platform initiative that Star Wars started a couple years back, basically to like do something different than the Skywalkers, because we're a little tired of the Skywalkers. You know what I'm saying? God bless them. We love them. Luke is my dude, but there's a big galaxy, and there's a lot of stories to tell. So the High Republic was actually like 200 years before all the movies take place. And they put a team together of some of their favorite writers, which I guess I'm one of. And they were like, let's make a new era of Star Wars when the Jedi were at their height and talk about what that was like, instead of just showing the Jedi as these tragic, about to die dudes or one left or whatever. So we got to develop this whole new era. Star Wars is the same era that the Acolyte TV show takes place in, and it's truly just like an amazing experience to be part of that. But I also write my own shit. Shadow Shaper is one of my first young adult novels that a lot of folks know me for. My more recent work is Ballad and Dagger, and I have a bunch of novels for kids. I have a standalone book called The Book of Lost Saints, and I just love writing, man. I just love stories, especially.
Man,
and then I read a bunch of comics.
They know who we got up in here. They know who we got up in here, man. They're not
Thank you. And then wait, before I forget, let me plug my Substack, because I always forget, but that's where I've been doing a lot of my writing. So please do check it out. It's basically just, if you Google my name in Substack, you'll find it. But I write a lot about writing. We're writing a lot about the genocide in Palestine and what's going on there for the past year, because that's a lot of my work too. I do organizing work, and I've been, on the ground here in New Orleans, working with folks and organizing to try to stand up to that. And that's also part of the writing. It's like these things are all connected, and some of my work is also just saying, like, living that life so people know that you don't have to just be this one thing or this other thing. You don't have to just be a writer who's quiet about the world. You don't have to just be an organizer who doesn't tell stories. We all doing all of that work all the time. It's one thing. I love that, man.
Thank you for making sure you plug it. Plug, toot. And also, people are, and I don't want to go into that much, but I will say that people do, I want to say more so lately, possibly because of social media and how to algorithm yourself, are like siloing, like I'm this, so that you can find me doing this. And we're intertwined, man. The things are intertwined, man. So yeah. Thank you. Hey, let's get into the show, because now that you don't know what's going to happen, I'm even more intrigued because of how just the energy you're bringing already. To not know what's going to happen and you bring this in, I am in love with what's about to happen. So today we're going to talk about a phrase, get to the impact of a phrase, get into the history of a phrase that I've heard a few times, a good amount of times. And I think once every season we mention this fella on the show that's in this phrase. And I try to only do it once because I come from a Christian household. No, but today, man, we're going to unveil the origin, confirm the meaning, assess the value of the devil is in the details. Ooh. So look, hey. So I try to match the phrases up with who we're rocking with, and I'm like, man, I'm looking at Daniel's work. I'm like, there's something about like how much he gives a fuck is in here. So
I'll take it.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just
take
certain
it.
levels
I'll
of
take
like I'm immersed in my what I'm giving to the audience, or I haven't thought about the audience just yet. I just love this that much, you know, like those layers and those lines. So before we get into the definition of it, let's go around. Let's talk about our connection to it. I'll start with 20 to set us off, to set the stage. 20, your connection to The Devil's in the Details.
Yo, the funny thing about this phrase is that I've heard it growing up, but I don't know if it's a positive or negative phrase. I still don't know whether or not you compliment me or you coming for me in this phrase, because obviously the word devil, depending on how you was raised, we're open forum show here, Dave. Depending on how you was raised, you can either take that in a positive route or a negative route. You get what I mean? And until I feel like I can learn, this is one of those ones where I feel like when I learn the origin, when I learn the definition, it's going to totally change or give me a better understanding of it. But just in general aspect, I feel like when someone says devil's in the details, it's like, pay attention to what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like making sure that you are dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Make sure that you are using your punctuation. Make sure that the presentation that you're giving it is the best presentation. Don't just put it down and don't go over it. You know, have pride in that work. So hopefully that's a little more positive. That's a more positive reinforcement. You know what I mean? But we shall see if I am totally wrong and that I've been saying this phrase wrong pretty much, my entirety.
That's all I have to say about
we'll
that.
Hurt. I'll go last. Daniel, hit us with your connection.
All right. As he was talking, I was like, man, I guess I have a lot to say about this. I'm going to try to keep it short. I don't want to be the guest that just rambles. I'm not going to do that. But let me tell you, I was raised, I'm Jewish, but I'm also a Santero, which is, you're in Miami. Because I'm also Cuban, and that's how we do, And so we have Alegba. Alegba is he's the trickster, right? He's the crossroads. Yeah. That's the keeper of the keys. That's the doorway. Everything happens with him first and him last. He's the beginning and the end of everything. And because of that trickster nature, a lot of times Christianity would take him and turn him into a malevolent devil type character incorrectly, because he's not. Because it's like Alegba's the one who, when you trying to get out the door and you can't find your car keys, and you're like, what the, and you're all in a flurry, and then you just give up and you just sit down and you're like, you know what, fuck it, and then they're in your pocket.
He's the one that put it in your pocket. Yeah.
Right, and not on top of that, then you leave the house and it turned out you were like, gonna be an hour early. And so you actually made it right on time because you took a minute and slowed down. You know what I mean? So there's always it turns your life around in this really particular way. But anyway, so that's what I think of sometimes. Sometimes that's to say that sometimes, especially I think Western stuff will cast aspersions on, some of those elements that are trickster-like or that are mischievous, and really they get us to the good place if you can work with them instead of against them, right? So I think about that, and then the other thing I'll say is that when people I teach writing, right? I have a class on, fuck is it called? It's a platform where you do classes online, and I always forget the name. But if you go to my website, you can find it. I teach writing, and one thing about character is that people are always like, how do you give us a good character description right quick, right? And you don't have much time. You're not going to spend 6 pages on one character and be like, to talk about all the every little aspect of their life, where they were born, what the son was doing when they were born. None of that bullshit matters, right? What matters is who they are right now and the decisions they make right now. The decisions we make, the crossroads, right, include how we get dressed, right? And I always think about it like a crush. You have a crush on somebody. You only seen them but for a couple minutes, maybe a couple seconds every day you pass on the way to work, or you in class with them, but you don't know them. You want to know more. That's the same energy you bring into an initial character description. And what it is about that person that jumps out at you that makes you kind of want to know more, it's a detail. Mm-hmm. It's something about them that is different or weird or unique that makes you be like, who are you? I need to know more. Why did you wear 2 different shoes on that day? Why are you wearing a tuxedo, and a banana hat or whatever? That's a like extreme example, but like, what is it about them? It's something that they did. It's a detail of them, but you got to find that detail that matters. Because if you inundate us with every single thing they're wearing, we're going to just phase out. It's not going to really hit. You got to, as a writer, you have to pick the details that matter, and that's what the devil
I like
is.
it.
That's
I like it.
And that's all I have to say about that.
I love it. I can't add anything better than that. My connection is, I would say, in the middle of where you both are. Like I haven't locked in on like I say this when, or I've heard this when. You are proud of what that person has done to the level that they've done it, or you're disappointed in that person and you wanted more out of it. I haven't locked in on that. I also am like the devil part. Like, is it a thing that you kind of slyly say just because that one word is in there because of how we just associate, So I'm like, I want to know more about it because I actually am a detail oriented person up until. So I like rules and boundaries, and I like knowing structure mainly because one, it allows me to be sustainable over time, but two, and more importantly, it allows me to know how I can, like how far out of bounds can I go? Like how much can I push? I need that. So in a similar way, you were talking about, Daniel, like that little like trickster, like I have that in me of like, look, it's not that I'm trying to break the rule, it's that I see a gap here. And I want to emphasize that this gap could end up being working for all of us. Not to just say break the rules to the hell. I get why there's a rule, but like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I do.
Wow.
That makes sense.
Yo, go ahead and let Forrest.
And that's all I have to say about that.
I got to let Forrest close us out.
Exactly. I'm not glad that was Forrest Gump. Yeah. That's terrible. I hate that movie, man. I'm sorry. I know I'm wrong for that. I understand.
Okay.
We can talk about it sometime.
All right, yeah. We definitely talk about that because that's definitely put together movie. It sounds more personal than actually like structural.
I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm just saying it's not for me. I don't like biopics in general, and that's a fictional biopic, but it's still about like when we go in like from birth through
real.
someone's life.
I actually can get with that.
Like that's it's very rare that I care enough about someone to want to know what the fuck was happening when they were born. I don't give a fuck. Like nothing was happening. They're a baby. They're not a protagonist. They're not taking any action.
That is writer right there. He just gave. That's an example of what he just started off his whole conversation with. He's like, man, I don't need all the when they born and all that other shit, man.
Let's get to it.
We go right now. And then he went and said it just killed it. One of the
I don't claim to be right.
The movies, he just killed it like Forrest Gump.
I love it.
Right.
Great take. Great take. Because I'm all for it. We heard a couple episodes like my training day take. So like I'm for those types of takes. I think Denzel should have won. I think it's bad writing that he lost. 20, my bad. I need to.
You should complain to the writer's room.
No, but horrible right. Horrible right. You know what I'm saying? Horrible right. No. I mean, you know what it is, Mario? Both of you guys are kind of pushing towards that, like finding that clause, finding that opening, like you just said. I feel like me and my experiences is more making sure that opening is not there. So I think that's really what I'm excited to kind of like dissect this, because I want to see which one of us is right, because I want to be honest with you, because that's what I'm saying. Like I want to be able to say that are we paying the devil's in the details because you can find that hole, or the devil's in the details because you're not making that.
I like it. All right, let's get into the definition to help us out. Yeah. So typically we got two today. First time for this one, I think it may be a second time, but we got the Oxford Dictionary here, and the Oxford Dictionary defines the devil is in the details as the details of a matter are its most problematic aspect. Okay. And then we've got a show favorite, dictionary.com, defines the devil's in details as even the grandest project depends on the success of the smallest components. So exactly. So Daniel, I'll toss it to you. What we typically do, what stands out but in each definition and or the differences in them? Like what stands out for you?
I mean, what I believe is that every opposite lives within itself. So like there's, there is no good without the bad. There is no bad without the good. You know what I mean? So like, and that doesn't make it a wash, because I think that's the common misconception too, is that it's like, oh, there's good and there's bad. Oh, well, I guess there's no morality. I'm not saying that. Bad is still bad. When something is bad, it's bad. But there's always an element of good within bad. And like, so how do you move with that is kind of the question I think it opens up for us. But I just know it's a truth about the world that we look around and we can see it everywhere we look. And I think that's a perfect example, and that, like, that's the same thing, like, right? Like Alegba can help us out, right? The devil is bad, right? They are not the same thing, but we've seen throughout history, like, people kind of like combining them for different reasons and all these different things. So I just think like and details are a perfect example of that, because you will read a contract and it'll seem great, and there'll be that one little clause that you skimmed over, and that's what fucks your life, or it'll be that one little thing that's like, so I just feel like the details, that's the example of that. The good and the bad exist in the same realm, no matter what. We try to separate them. We try to act like these are simple binaries.
Hey, I love that. I love that breakdown. 20, where you at with it?
Can you repeat the
Absolutely. They say that is defined as even the grandest project depends on the success of the smallest components. I'll go Oxford again. In comparison to the details of a matter are its most problematic aspect. Now, they be talking about Oxford like it's the
yeah.
There we go.
That's what I was just about to say, Daniel. Like if neither one of them give me the answer that I'm looking for yet, that's what. Who did it? Because I'm like, did they give me the answer that I'm looking for? Did they clarify anything? But man, dictionary.com is probably the closest one that I would have to say. But that one is I feel like more close to saying closing the gap. You know what I'm saying? It's not pretty much, looking to see if someone else was failing. Look to make sure that you're not failing and completing the whole task.
No. I hear you.
If you know what
I'm saying? No. I hear you. Now, again, it's always cheating for me because I've done the research. So, like, I try to be so in depth, but also, like, I try to be a little bit removed so I'm not leading, but I'm a leader. I lead. These show. I have to be honest. The conversation is a loaded and leaded conversation. That's what exactly. Like, you don't have to form your own opinion.
Because I want to get off it. I want to get off whether or not which one it is, so I can give my good fucking. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to get. man. I want to be able to give a good ass assessment of it, but I'm still like confused on which one I want to pick.
Let's go.
I don't think it's one or the other. That's the thing. It's not one or the other.
That's what we might get. Hey.
Wow.
That's why I like the dictionary.com definition, because it actually leaves open that door. It's not saying the details of the good thing. It's saying the whole shit.
Whereas Oxford are like, you're going to have trouble with the details. You're going to have trouble with those details, dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Like, come on, Oxford. What's going on? The sky's always gray out there, so you know.
Right.
So I'm going to have to go back. I feel like we've only had them one other time. Typically, we have Cambridge, and Cambridge lands it. Like, Cambridge has become my favorite. Merriam-Webster's, they're so...
Oh.
Yeah, the brand Merriam-Webster is so, like... What is it? Like, okay, like, I get it. Y'all want to get in and get out. You want to write the definition and go home. Like, I get it. Like...
No, I get that.
What's that?
Y'all have one of these? This is
No!
Oh, get you an
doing
etymology dictionary. These things, I love this. This is the shit.
It got the library look to it. Like,
Yeah, it's yellowed. You could just pick it up and like turn to a page and learn some interesting shit about words.
20. We getting Daniel out. We getting
We
Daniel
gotta
out
mix
to a live event. We getting Daniel out. He's gonna. Hey, this is Kendrick. Let's get into the origin real quick.
Where'd that come from?
I'm already queued up. So the music just gonna play. But look, in the late 19th century, this phrase actually started out as God is in the details. And yeah.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Hold on. Exactly. Started out as God is in the detail. And there's a French version that's generally attributed to Gustave Flaubert. And then there's a German version, and they both came out around the same time, and that's accredited to Aby Warburg. And the French translation, direct translation, is the good God is in the detail. So before we get going, briefly, give me a quick one, because I wanna review these two people. Where y'all at with the fact that it started off as God is in the detail? What
the fuck happened? What happened? What went wrong?
Me and Danny was like, "Yo, wait, hold on, that changed the whole thing."
Rewind that shit.
It changed the whole thing. But I can see clearly now. The rain is gone.
Correct.
I just want to say that proves my motherfucking point times 10. Like, what did I say? The good and the bad live together. They the same. They in the same home like this. Yeah. Boom.
You're right. We're going to spend the rest of this show proving Daniel to be right. And that is why he came on the show. It's like
the show should be like that.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Gustave Flaubert. So he was a French novelist. He was actually considered the leading exponent of literary realism in France and abroad. And according to theorist Corneille Cavas, Flaubert's realism strives for formal perfection. So he was one of the first, like, look, my realism is actually going to be realism, not attempts at realism, right? And then critic James Wood said this of Flaubert: novelists should thank Flaubert the way poets thank spring. It all begins again with him. Flaubert decisively established what most readers and writers think as modern realist narration, and his influence is almost too familiar to be visible. You can find some of the stuff in Defoe, Austen, and Balzac, but not all of it can be found until Flaubert. So, like, he was a man of detail, apparently, right? And then Warburg was a German art historian, and he was a cultural theorist who founded the Kulturwissenschaftliche Bibliothek. Now, I lived in Germany for a little bit, Daniel, so I know you.
I was about to say,
yeah. He's niggas when he does the whole German language. You know what I'm saying?
I do. That's one time.
I was not ready. I know. I see all those. My
it
mind
took a minute.
Like it would sound like a sneeze, but if I tried to do it.
Oh man! So it's basically the Warburg Library of Cultural Studies. That's what he founded. It's a private library which moved to the Warburg Institute in London, and is at the heart is the legacy of the classical world and transmission of classical representation in the Western world through the Renaissance. So everything about art history through the Renaissance is up in there. Now, Warburg was born in Hamburg to a wealthy family, Jewish bankers, and he rebelled against all of that. They were conservative. He was a wild child, rebelled against the religious rituals, and he rejected the career plans for him as well. So he actually renounced being a rabbi, he renounced being a doctor, and renounced being a lawyer to be a historian. And he's actually considered one of the major benefactors of the humanities during the 20th century, despite being washed away once the Nazis came into play following World War II. His credence is washed away. But before that, and now as of recently, he's considered like, okay, a staple in art history. Hey,
Nazis fuck up everything.
Look, we are going to definitely touch on that. So Flaubert, who considered himself an enraged liberal and celebrated individual protests against power monopolies, like this was his bag. He lived through this phase in his writing and his commitment to capturing reality, while Warburg rejected his family's wealth and religious conservatism to find his own connection to God, basically capturing art history. So Dan, let me ask you, do you resonate with the idea that they brought up, the expression that they brought up with details in your work? And if so, where do you feel that's best expressed in your work? Whoo!
Ooh, gee, that's a serious question.
Yeah, that's layered.
There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack there. Layers, right? Well, first let me say that I'm not a literary historian, so I don't know the details. So recognizing that the devil is in them, I will tread cautiously as I say the next thing, which is that I always raise an eyebrow when I hear particularly white literary critics putting the origin of everything in a white dude. I think we always have to ask questions when that happens. I'm not saying it's not true, but I'm saying that Eurocentric and white literary world is a circle jerk. To put it as politely as I can. And the world is much bigger than this little dot on a map, Europe, that's basically, a bunion on Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And respectfully. And then, the United States.
Correct.
And that's
Absolutely.
it's just bigger than that. You know what I mean? Like, it's bigger. And so I'm not disagreeing with the man because he did the, homework and he has that basis of knowledge that I'm not claiming to have. What I do know is that folks have been telling stories for centuries before Europeans put them into books and including putting them in books. And so, I always root storytelling back to the spoken word, not the written word. Even though novelists are putting words down on paper, our roots are always in people who sat around and told stories, both in Europe and everywhere else too. That doesn't exclude Europe because there's some badass storytellers in Europe still to this day, obviously, and have always been. The point is, I just think like novels go deeper than other novels. We go way back to the beginning of storytelling, which is the beginning of humanity, whether that's people, grunting at each other or etching on cave walls. That's storytelling. That's a fundamental part of who we are. That doesn't mean that there haven't been, obviously, like the technology of storytelling has changed over time. And I have a great respect for that, So
no, you good.
All that said, I didn't mean to go that deep.
Good.
Like I always feel a little bit skeptical when people are like, this is the source, this one dude born 100 years ago. And it's like, bro, like we go deeper than that. Like we storytellers, this is sacred work, and so, respect to that. And yes, like there is a literary tradition of that detail work of like that, that idea of being like, this is what it's like right here, right now in this moment. And we're going to lean into that, to talk about this story. Did I freeze?
No.
Okay, cool. And so, I feel that the power of, like, I just, opened up by saying, like, details are what bring us into the moment of the story, and they matter for that, and picking which detail matters, whether it's about a character or about a scene, I think is how we lock things in. And I think that's a storytelling technique, to come back to my earlier point, that does go back centuries, but that people have been honing and really making a whole tradition out of.
Absolutely.
And that matters.
Thank you, dog. Thank you. I appreciate that. 20. Where do you feel you express, where do you express, where you feel like God is in the detail? Where do you see that expressed in your life the most, dog?
Well, Mario, you know me, man. Like, I'm that person that pays attention to the details that nobody talks about or nobody pays attention to. Like I would sit here and I'll sit there and have a conversation with but you know what, Danny, just because you said that last part, man, we're going to go there because I'm usually always the one that goes to the point where it's like, you shouldn't say it started there just because you have more resources.
That's what it is. Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
thank you.
And that's usually what it is. But just because you give me the courage to talk my talk, I'm going to ahead and talk my talk. The details that, like just an example of the details that I do. Like if I'm talking to a 60 plus year old white male, in my mind, I'm saying to myself, he either was a racist or turned his eyes away from racism. Regardless of what he's doing now, like he could be sitting here having this conversation with me, but that's the and then I honestly make my judgment off of that. And it's like, like it might be the little details that you've done when you were younger that no one else knows about or no one else can see. But for some reason, me personally, those are example of the things that I pay attention to people. You know what I mean? Like you say, like when you first came on here, you were like, yo, I'm Cuban. I can see it now. You get what I'm saying? I can see it. Like not to even put you in a box or anything like that, but even in that aspect, I felt a little bit more relatable to you because of that small little detail that you gave me. You know what I'm saying? Like even though we're gonna have a great conversation, we're gonna have a great show, that small little detail is what got me to relate to you. So in a sense of when I say the ones that people don't really talk about, those are the things that are important to me. Those little small details that you might not know created who you are as a character.
Right.
Those are the ones that I enjoy watching. Those are the ones that I enjoy finding out. Those are the ones I enjoy, dissecting because, yeah, you can be a certain person on the outside or on the show. Like you can definitely say, oh, yeah, I gave up all my family's riches or whatever.
To be an art historian.
Right.
To be an art historian. But, how'd your family get those riches? That matters to me because if your family came up out the mud on some, humble thing, it hits different as opposed to if your family got that money off of slaves' backs.
That's right. That's
so
real.
you telling me that you gave up your worldly possessions. That doesn't move me as opposed to how'd you get the worldly possessions.
And also, did you deal with the fact that those were because I'm with you on that, and it's also did you deal with that? Because it's one thing. I don't want to say it's easy. I don't know what it's like, but to give up all your worldly possessions is one thing, but to say this is where we got them, and this is what I'm going to do about it. That's a different thing. Those are totally different things. Let me shout out this book. This is such a good fucking book, and people don't talk enough about it. Edward Said was a Palestinian academic and amazing writer. He got really famous for a book called Orientalism, and that became a whole theory basically where he looked at the Europeans who were talking about the Middle East back in the day and basically turned the camera around. So he was like, people are always looking at us, we're gonna look at you and see what y'all are doing. And he looked at how the anthropology field was basically a front for empire and how much they use that to conquer, right? This is the follow-up to it. It's called Culture and Imperialism, and it talks about exactly that, literally using the authors that you were name-checking. He gets into Jane Eyre, the book, and all this other stuff, all these folks
the people,
who are
right?
The gods of European literature, and how everything they did was wrapped up in colonization. You can't separate them from that. But in today's world, we try to, just like we do with the founding fathers, pretending that they just didn't own human beings, right? Just act like all is cool. But literature does the same shit. And it's not even to say don't ever talk about them or read them, because he reads them deep. He goes deep into their lives and their work and everything else and ties them into the slave trade. And literally, it's in the books. We just skim over that part, and they talk about it in literature classes because they don't want to deal with that shit. And then that's the history of Western literature. And we need to deal with that fact because we are all living in the motherfucking shadow of it.
Right.
Guys. Y'all are killing it, man. And you know what? I love that, and I will say this. I will say this because of that. I was holding this one. I haven't even told 20 this one. I've held this in my pocket, but I'm gonna say it on this show on this episode because I love that y'all. 20 goes there relatively often. I love how the depth at which you're going there with us, Daniel, because that's the core of this show. Is we're bringing you these things that we say all the time. There's something to them. I'm bringing them to you on a platter to say, this is how we got here. Are you going to take another step? And then the second thing is that I haven't said is that the reason why I use these phrases is because you cannot separate that they're in English, and you cannot separate where that is always going to end up starting from, quote unquote. And I will never I want that to be examined. I'm not going to put up our people on a plate so that they can excavate our show. I'm actually turning it around and saying, we be saying this because we just did what we just did. The Great Minds Think Alike with my man King Gibbs, and we got down to like Thomas Paine, who was not a great guy himself, but was so sick of Washington faking like he was a good guy that he was like, hey y'all, the great minds don't think alike because you think this guy's a great mind and he's a fraud, and wrote a letter about it. And like, I want y'all to now sit with that. Whenever you hear the words great minds think alike, I actually want you to think about how much of a fraud Washington was. So that's why we do the show. Deep. And I'm going to segue that into this next part about how, like you all said, this circle jerk of what greatness is and origin is. So we just talked about how Warburg, who put himself, based on my research, put himself on a pedestal to reject the riches of his family. They were Jewish bankers. It sounded like, to me, as I read, it sounded like a spoiled kid just not wanting to do what the family does. Like, I don't know if it was a deep introspection.
Right.
But he got erased because the Nazis weren't going for what he was going for. No.
Did he get killed in the Holocaust?
He was already gone. He got out. He got out. Yep.
Oh, his work was
the New York Times cites Ludwig Mies van der Rohe with the origin of the phrase. So if you just quickly Google this, they'll say that Ludwig Mies van der Rohe is the originator of the devil's God is in the details, because the New York Times cited him as that in his obituary.
Right.
Now, I got to go into the detail of Ludwig really quick. So he used God is in the details to provide acknowledgement of a job well done and to remind himself that his success was attributed to a higher power. So he wasn't even necessarily talking about like how detailed he was, although he was a detailed person to the extent that I'm about to explain. So he was a German-American architect, academic, and interior designer. So he also was not, he veered into the creative lane or, some sort of humanities. And he's regarded as one of the pioneers of modern architecture. In the 30s, he was the last director of the Bauhaus, which was a groundbreaking school of modernist art that the Nazis did not like. So Ludwig Mies actually renamed himself as a part of his transformation from being a tradesman's son, which was where he comes from, to he wanted to be an architect only, known as this. I don't want nobody looking back, Jesus Carpenter, no, Messiah only, type of thing, where he changed his name. He added Van Deer, but then he added Roy, his mother's maiden name, but he changed it to Von Deer because Van Deer. He changed it to Van Deer, which is Dutch, from Von Deer, because Von Deer in German means that you are a official military nobleman. So like he couldn't even use that word, or they would have traced him back to some type of military family, and he was not that either. So he was like, I just want to be known as a design guy, basically. So he established his own style in the 1930s, like I said, the Bauhaus. And then in 1932, the Nazis forced all state-sponsored things to leave the campus of Dessau. And so Mies moved it to an abandoned factory in Berlin. It didn't do well. And so they eventually had to close because the Nazis came in and raided it. Now, once they raided it, it's crazy. It's crazy how this happened. So like, I'm going to ruin this, but I kind of like some of this stuff in here. Says Big H. Because I don't want the algorithm to mute the show. Big H says, I like some of this stuff, and we're going to use some of his designs in the Autobahn service stations, blah, 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 blah. So Mies and his homeboy Gropius are like, okay, the Reich are rocking with us. Is this how we stay afloat? So they're starting to design more stuff for the Reich. And Big H is like, no, I don't like modernist stuff. I actually hate what you're doing. Like, I liked that thing. I actually hate everything else you're doing. Squashed them, shrunk them. So Gropius and Mies van der Rohe hightailed it to America, to Chicago, where he ended up being modern. This is where he actually got his acclaim, bringing modernism to the States in Chicago. He did the Chicago Federal Complex. He did Edith Farnsworth House. He did 860 through 880 Lakeshore Drive, which still gets a lot of love. He did the Seagram Building, which I can't recollect off the top of my head. He did the McCormick House, which I can't recollect off the top of my head. He did the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. He did the National Gallery in Berlin. He did the Miles Building at Indiana University, and he did the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in D.C. Library in D.C. So he got some clout. Now, Ludwig took the phrase to heart. He changed his name in such detail, and then he made a name for himself in 3 phases of his life: pre-Nazi, Nazi kinda, because they really didn't rock with him, but it propelled him, and then in the U.S. So I'm asking this to both of you. I'm shooting it to Daniel first. Thoughts on, one, like Ludwig's first being attributed to it based on like, okay, there's pre-Nazi understanding of what good is versus post, and Ludwig won that war up until he got booted. And then talk to me about the commitment to detail, how that worked for you in different phases of your life, because his detail actually made room for him. It got him prestige, tried hard enough to where he got noticed, and then discredited, and then he left and was able to use his attention to detail to find success in Chicago and in the nation of the U.S. So Daniel, where do you see that? And how do you contribute your detail to your phases in your life? And this is what we were talking about earlier with your child.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure, man. Okay,
I really love this stuff.
You keep throwing a lot at us. It's good. It's good shit. Where to even start? First of all, this dude, I don't think we should gloss over the fact that
that's the part that sticks out to me. That like that. I'm reading this and I'm like, y'all are just saying this matter of factly, and y'all are shining a light on the dope shit he did. But like, he actually was like, okay, and then looked at his partner and was like, how can we stay locked in?
Right. And this is when, like you said, Big H is in power, so it's not even some period where you could conceivably be like, well, they weren't quite that yet. Nah. I don't even think that period really existed. You were paying attention, but I'm like, like, what are we doing here? Like, let's talk about what we're talking about. If they had loved your shit, then you would just be a Nazi architect. But you failed, and they didn't like your shit, so now you're an American architect. Congratulations.
Lake Chicago, Lakeshore Drive.
I don't know what do you want to...
Hydra. I don't know.
What are we doing here, people? So there's that. I do want to say that there's a difference between writing. Obviously, there's a difference between writing and architecture. And those architects, they need those details to lock in. Otherwise, a lot of people are going to die, right? It's like being an aerodynamic engineer or whatever. Those details really do matter in a different way than they do in, say, a novel, right? Like for a novel, I feel like, it's like we have a palette of information. I think about this with like world building, right? World building is a really interesting topic that I love thinking about and talking about with students and stuff. And it's like, we think about it in terms of fantasy writers, like you got to build up the world around the characters. But the truth is we always world building. Even if I'm writing a story about this very moment in this, like, just like that we were talking about earlier, like the realist school of thought of novels, right? Like you still got to world build. And to world build, you're doing the detail work to lock us in, like we've been talking about, and you're doing the context work to decide, like, what are the contours of your world? What matters in that? What are you not showing us? What are you showing us, right? Like to Saeed's point, like there'd be characters in these old books that everybody loves that would have, money from a plantation in Jamaica. That's all they would say about that. Who was working on that plantation?
Yeah, what the hell they was doing on that plantation?
Why did they stay on that plantation when they weren't being paid? Like what's going on? And so I think like that's a detail that we need to get into the devils of, like why are you working for the Nazis? And I don't think these are simple questions, right? But I also think that they deserve exploration, and that's where a lot. So that, and then the last thing is
where. And do you feel like that your attention to detail, like how has that shown up in your favor over your different phases in your career, in your life?
Yeah, it's tricky because I think one thing I also really caution against for artists, for writers, is perfectionism, and that'll kill you, like literally. Like the Santeros, like we have a phrase where we talk about how it's better to have soil on the body than the body in soil, because perfection is death. You don't want to strive for that. And that doesn't mean fail. Yep. It doesn't mean don't do your best. It just means that if you have this like magical golden thing that you're trying to get, that doesn't exist, right? You like, that's different. Doing your best is different than trying to create the perfect book. perfect book is not real. It's not a real thing. So you're gonna strive for something that doesn't exist, and you're gonna break yourself doing it, and then you're no good to nobody, right? And as we were talking about, we got families. Like we can't afford to just be broken. You know what I mean? Like we gotta figure out how to do the mental health work, so we can do the creative work. So that we can do the mental health work. It's a cycle, right? We gotta do all of those parts. And so that's what I think of with the details. Sometimes I think we get so fixated on details, it can be at the cost of the larger story. Like I've been relearning how to draw. I love drawing. I was a kid, like that was what I did all the time was draw. And the one thing that like takes the most discipline, I think, in terms of process is when you start a piece of work, you just want to like get into the details immediately, like that, because they bring the story to life, right? The devil's in them, like they can make or break a picture. So you get really fixated. It's so easy to just be like, oh, let me draw the face really well, and then let me draw the rest of it. And that's a great way to fuck up your drawing, because the real method is draw the big pieces first and get those locked in, so you know where they fit. And then start to like hone in on the details once you've got the big picture settled. And so if you do the details first, you're doing it at the cost of, and then you end up having to redraw shit because your head is this big and the body is this big. You know what I mean? And like, now we can move things around, with the great digital technology or whatever. But the point is like, it takes discipline to get the big picture down first. So I think sometimes we do need to work on the details, but we need to make sure they happen in the right order of things in a process that's healthy and that makes sense, rather than just be like detail, detail, detail. Okay, cool. You have a book full of details, and nothing else.
Heard that. You know what they about to do. 20. Where you at with it, man? Like, where do you different phases in your life, man? Details showing up, moving for you.
Before we go ahead and grade this, I just want to say that thank you, Mario. Thank you, Daniel, because I feel like I know which side
Beautiful.
I'm on now.
I've been saying there ain't no goddamn sides this whole time. What are you talking about?
I'm a side picker, man. I'm a side picker.
He is 1,000% like, I'm going to lean.
That's hilarious. All right, what side are you on in this conversation with no sides? Go ahead.
That's going to be number 2. Number 1. I love suspense. Number 1, Danny, man, I think you hit it right on the head, bro, right on the nose when you said if it depends on this, if the Nazis would have won, then he would have been a Nazi architect.
Exactly.
If they like this shit,
he's an American, and those are the details that I pay attention to. Those are the details that form that phrase for me. Have you closed up all those gaps enough to the point where, hey, this is not who you actually are, or this is who you actually are? And that's the side I'm on. I'm on the one that, hey, find that gap, find that hole, because that'll tell you what that person really is. If you find that hole, that'll tell you what the person really is. The devil is in the details. If you can look at the details and find that mishap, then you will find the devil.
Word. Okay. Let's get to it. Last little. When did it change? When did it change from God to devil? When did it change? In 1963. There's
man, stop.
What is the weather like?
Apparently in 1963, it became Devil in the Details as the popular version, thanks to, let me pick up my little iPad so I can see clearly, in a post-war European integration manual where after World War II, so you cannot escape. I want everyone to realize you cannot escape World War II. You can't, using this phrase, you can't escape. I want everyone to hear this. Do what you want with the phrase after the show cuts off. Please understand, you cannot say this phrase without being attached to World War II.
That was such a turning point on so many.
Like when you said the 63, I was like, oh, hell.
Foreign ministers met in Europe to make important decisions about how to enter renegotiations after all this stuff, right? So Richard Maynard wrote an account of the committee meeting. There's notes, the meeting minutes, and he wrote that the officials had to remember that the devil is in the details. There's no reason, rhyme or reason, why, explaining why he wrote it that way. He did, and it stuck. Who is Richard Maynard?
So this was
Yeah.
Wait. Hold on. Pause. This is what year are we talking about? Because
45. So
World
this is
War II
63
ended
after.
in, 45,
so they're still
right?
figuring out what to do with all this stuff, like rearranging Europe.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. So this is like
Post-war,
a
like
post.
what?
20 years
Let's
later,
redraw the
still
lines.
figure shit out.
Let's redraw the lines on the map.
Gotcha. Right.
Which is in and of itself nuts that there's a meeting
Man.
for this.
That's Western civilization is having meetings about exactly that shit. How are we going to divide motherfuckers up to best get
And
their
by
oil?
any means necessary,
And
these are the
boom.
lines, y'all.
And that is literally why we in the middle of a genocide.
Redrawing the
Like,
lines
is
is happening right now,
You can trace
y'all.
it right back to that bullshit.
And the crazy thing about it is that probably the reason why, because it was on some shady shit. Like, you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, hey, y'all, listen, this is the most important thing because they're allowing us to draw these lines. So we got to make sure we know where these lines are and to say, hey, this is this and this and this, so we can get this oil, so we can get this land, so we can get this. You know what I mean? Like that's probably the main reason why he's telling people, yo, we got to pay
Devil's in the
attention to
details. I want the notes. I want the notes from that meeting. Now, there's 5 Richard Maynards because I was trying to find it. I'm like, this has to be somewhere. There's 5 Richard Maynards to note. One is an actor, not him. The other is a television producer, not him. The other's a photographer, not him. And 2 of them are characters in a book and a movie. So I don't know. He was an important person with nothing.
He was probably one of the important guys who was like a bureaucrat in the background.
Yep.
He was a public
signed his
figure. He
name.
was just taking it. So he's probably a spy that like had a major effect on all the world happening around him. But
He's like down in history, but what can wash him away? Now, here come the New York Times again in an editorial in 1989 that said that the God and devil in the phrase are interchangeable, and that's what everyone went with since 89.
Oh, interchangeable.
The Times said it. The New York Times said so. The New York Times said so. Let's grade it, man. Let's grade it. We've done it. We reached the end. Let's grade it. So, Daniel, this is what we do at the end of each show. Well, kind of the end. We have a 3-point grading scale. We do power. Like, what's the impact when it's said or heard? Like, does it shift the room when you hear it? Does it shift the things for you when you say it? Then we got speed. Is it just eloquent, straight up, without all the other stuff? Can you just say it smoothly? And then we got the wild card grade, which is typically our guest preference grade. Any way you want to spin it based on all the information. It could be prejudice. You could completely ignore what we did this whole show. A through F, pluses and minuses count. I'll give it to 20. 20's been handling the power grade all year. We're going to keep it going. 20 power grade.
All right. On the power, I give it A minus. I kind of jumped it up. It was at first it was going to get a B plus just because it changed from. They tried to say it could change from God to devil. You know, I don't like things that kind of like change that can change like that because that means it's not definite. But I give it a minus only because of one, also the longevity of it. The longevity of it, you can't deny how long, how long it has been around and people are saying it. To the strength of it, because it is something that that motivates somebody, that gets somebody going, that you can use it in a sense of holding power over someone. Like if you say it to someone, that can make them pay more attention. Or if you say it, that can actually bring more power to you as opposed to, paying attention on what you're doing. So I give it an A minus. I'm gonna give it an A minus on a curve type of deal, bro. Because I like I said, one thing I do like the longevity, and I do enjoy like the nostalgia of it because of saying it. You know what I'm saying? Like I've heard it before a long time ago, and I enjoy it.
Stamped in eternity. All right, speed grade. The devil's in the details. I mean, I think alliteration wins in ways there. God is in the details. The thing where I'm not going to take away from, typically I would do the same, like, oh, it changed, and God in the details doesn't have the alliteration, but because it's one syllable and it's not really like disrupting the flow, you almost will forget that it's God once you finish with the details part, because you can still say like, it still means the same thing. I'm gonna give this one a B+ for that. Devils in the details. I'm also almost skipping the little like filler words to get the devil details. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna give it a B+ because it can get said. And I think one of my favorite ways to grade Speed is, I think a kid can say it without knowing what it's about. They can say devils in detail and run away or something silly like that. So give it a B+. All right, Daniel, what you got? Wild card.
All right. I'm gonna grade it on story because I think story matters. You know, like this is what we do, right? And this shit has a good story. The thing that I always come back to with story is every story is the heart of every story is a crisis. And a crisis means a turning point. It doesn't even mean, we always think a crisis is like something bad happened, you know, you turned 40, whatever, you know, like dumb shit, whatever. But we always have a negative connotation. But the root of crisis is just, it's a medical term. It's an ancient Greek medical term. And it just means that the disease process turned a corner for one direction or another. Could have gotten better, or it just means something changed. And if we use that as like the beating heart of story, we understand that every single story is the story of change. Like, just like Octavia Butler taught us, everything we touch, we change. You know, God has changed. And I believe that deeply. And so as a story, this was dope. This was an A for me, you know, because we got a turning point. We got the date. We almost got the time. Like it was, we got the day of the week. Like we have a real true turning point. And even if we didn't have that exact moment, you know, it started with God and it ended with the devil. You can't get more of an arc than that. That's an arc. You know what I mean? That's a character arc. It went from one to the other. And on the journey there, we went into, you know, socio-political history. We went into colonization. We went into literary history. We got Nazis. You know, we got good guys and bad guys. We got morally ambiguous characters. We got the devil and God. Like that's you know, layers. Like we had a conversation about layers, and there's a philosophical level to it where we could think about, like, you know, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Is this about this or that? Like there was so much there. And I mean, I know y'all have a good conversation about a phrase every week, and that's what y'all's show is. I just want to say this particular phrase lent itself very easily to all these layers, and it was only but a handful of words, right? That's powerful. That's dope. So A maybe even an A+ on the story grade.
Hey, Daniel, they're not. They got their tickets. They got their money's worth. The ticket was.
I can't even cry. I can't even talk. No, Daniel, no, you hit it. Man, that was a good point that you made, man. We sometimes we have these phrases, and we hear the story, and we hear the origin, we hear the definition, but actually like putting it together as an actual story, that actually gave you everything. Honestly, kind of felt like Forrest Gump to me, man. I'm not gonna lie.
Not the callback. Not the callback.
I can't believe you brought Gump back into this, man.
Hey, man.
That's all I have to say about it.
You know what? I'm gonna let you. We got one more thing.
The Dictionary of Misinformation.
Oh, okay.
20.
Oh, perfect, Daniel. Like I'm you know what? Another thing that I want to show you appreciation for, and you know, give you flowers for is those, you know, like you're the first guest that really like was pubbing books on our show, and like these books, and like you said, you got on the show, you didn't know what it was about, but just the universe put us together today, and you just happen to have these books that just really go
right behind them, even right.
Yeah, it fits well what we're doing. Yeah, exactly, bro. They fit so well with what we're doing. So in the form of that, me and Mario have our own dictionary called the Dictionary of Misinformation. Yeah, man. What we do is we ask our guests for a letter in the alphabet other than X or Z, because they've been used already, because they like the challenges, Daniel. They like the challenges. But X and Z has been used already. So if you can give us a letter, and what we're going to do is we're going to find just some information that you've probably been misinformed about because of this book, man. It's a great way to kind of like end our segment, end our show. And it's a great way to stop all the arguments, because once it's in the book, we don't argue about it no more.
I didn't write the book.
We didn't write the book. Don't get mad at us because we didn't write the book.
The book. Yeah, man.
So,
all right. Well, my wife's name is
Beautiful.
Brittany. So let me go with
Heard
B.
that, man.
Let's
Heard
go
that.
with
Heard
B.
that.
I'm gonna flip it over. Oh yeah, great. I like this one. We're gonna go with B. We're gonna go with the British royal family.
Yeah.
And that is sometimes remarked that in recent times the British royal family is actually more German than British. And it's recognized to the degree this is true and how long it's been true, but since the death of Anne in 1714, the last of the Stuarts, to the crowning of George V, British blood steadily diminished Britain's reigning monarchs. So George V married Mary, whose grandmother was Hungarian, and that went all the way down to where, hey, we're mostly German in the British royal family.
Listen. Not for nothing, a couple of those motherfuckers
and to
were
connect
Nazis
it to even further. That's why I said this is perfect.
Speaking of Nazis.
And to connect it. And to build a London Bridge.
Which is probably also more German than British.
Right. I mean.
Yes.
That's all. Let me shout out my wife's book.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because I read the name. This is that Self-Same Metal. Ooh. Shakespearean YA fantasy.
Is that the one that used to write for Shakespeare? Oh,
so the main character is she basically can bend metal. She's like a metal.
Okay.
Out of Ogun. So she does the stunts and the stage combat for Shakespeare's theater troupe in Shakespearean England. So Shakespeare's a character in it. And then the Fae attack London, and because she can bend metal and the Fae can't deal with iron, she's like the one person who can basically save London from the Fae.
That sounds dope as hell.
It's a dope ass book. It's called That Self-Same Metal. It's part of a trilogy. So books 1 and 2 are out. Book 3 comes out in April. And my wife is a Shakespearean like scholar and actor and stuff. So she's like just grew up on this shit. And then she was like, you know what? Let me write a book about it. Awesome. She's dope.
No,
Yeah,
we would love to have her on. No lie.
Yeah. I'll pass her.
I ain't mean to jump the gun. Because you know motherfuckers out here that don't like
There's
Billy.
a lot of people that
There's
don't
a lot
like
of motherfuckers
Shakespeare.
that don't like Billy.
Oh, the people that think that someone wrote the books instead of him. Oh yeah.
Hey,
when we
out here
do,
like Billy,
Daniel,
man.
we've done a lot of shows, and if maybe one day, let's say year 8, this is year 4, in year 8, we're gonna count how many people when he's mentioned, how many people are mentioning him to hate on him and to like him, and it's gonna be one-sided.
It's gonna be super one-sided.
You need to have Brittany on because you need to ask her about this. But I'm a fan. She is a fan too. Like I'm
Billy Shakes.
I'm team
We're
Shakes.
Billy Shakes. We're team Billy Shakes here too.
We're not one. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, you got to be if you into how words came about because that motherfucker put more words into this language than anybody else, any other individual. And there's a whole analysis about this that when Brittany's on, she can tell you more about. But there's some classism in how people don't want to attribute his work.
Okay, real quick callback. So that's what got Jack of all trades jumping. He was actually called that in a negative way by a guy whose name Johnny Green, I believe, because Johnny Green came from the thing and Billy Shakespeare came in ready to do everything, and it was like, fuck is this kid? Yeah.
Who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Who's the son of a glove maker? What are you doing?
Jack of all trades.
Literally, hated on him. You know, he wasn't nobility, but he died nobility basically because he did that thing with language, and that's the power of words. That dude was doing it before anybody else, and it made them uncomfortable, and so they had to make a story about how it wasn't him. That's how I see it.
Dub 20. What you got for us before we get out of here, man?
Hey, listen, man. I just want to say love those, man, who love you, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't forget to show that love to them. Don't wait till they're dead to give them their flowers. Don't wait till, they're not around to be more fonder of them, man. Like, there's people in your life right now that genuinely loves you. Just find them. Even if you ain't got nothing to do, just find them.
Something fun to do.
Just find them.
Look, I cannot compete with what either one of you have said throughout the show. So all I'm going to leave us with is that you can find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're brought to you by the Underdog Podcast Network. Go to praisethephrase.com, praisethephrase.com/shop for other things. Check out Daniel's website. It'll be in the show notes. Check out the books he mentioned, especially his wives, because we're super pluggers here. We know that, capitalism does its thing, but we all got to keep a roof over our heads. And you can please remember That value is in the eye of the appraiser. We'll see y'all next week.
Yeah, like.